Liberty Blue. Rangers Podcast. With Andrew Chelney. And Nick Zararis.
Rangers fans, welcome to the best Rangers podcast in town. I'm Andrew Chelney alongside Nick Zararis, and we are Liberty Blue. We scream about the Rangers so that you can save your voice. That's how deeply we care about you, and we appreciate that you've joined us for the ride. This is episode 37, live on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube, recording just a little bit early, so hopefully Christopher doesn't do anything silly in the meantime. Full video will be up on our YouTube page at Liberty Blue Podcast, and the audio version will be available wherever you get your podcast. Search Liberty Blue on your favorite podcast platform, and it should be there. Give the show that shiny and illustrious 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It really, really helps the show more than you think it does. At Liberty Blue Pod on Twitter and Instagram, I'm at Chelney Andrew, CHELNEY Andrew, alongside Nick Zararis, Nick Zararis. Those are our personal Twitter handles to follow as well. Nick, the Rangers won a game with 4 defensemen last night. How about that?
It kind of felt like everything imaginable was happening at once in that game yesterday. You had Miller get thrown out. You had them announce 5 minutes before the game starting that Carpenter and Schneider were both dressing, but they weren't playing. Zibanejad blocks the shot, and everybody thinks, he broke his ankle. The season's over. As whirlwind of emotions as you could have through 2 periods of hockey. Zibanejad comes out for the 3rd period. They win the game.
He scores a goal.
He scores a power play goal.
Right.
Everybody takes a deep breath and looks at, okay, the losing streak's over. Zibanejad is fine, relatively speaking. He probably woke up sore as hell this morning. But because you know how tight your skates are tied, so you're not really thinking about it. And then, God knows what Lindgren's arm might not be attached to his body anymore, but he still might play on Wednesday against the Flyers. So
it's interesting that you say that, because if you take a look at the video that the Rangers posted post game of them giving the hat to Jacob Trouba, you could see Lindgren in the background. He had no sling. He looked fine, which is nothing short of a miracle. And I don't know what kind of voodoo Jim Ramsey, I don't know kind of like contract Jim Ramsey has with his local voodoo person, but it's a great deal. I gotta tell you, because whatever he's doing to these players it's literally performing magic. Like
knock on your desk.
I mean, it's incredible, because when you looked at the hit that Lindgren sustained against the Capitals, you thought this was a separated shoulder, but it looked bad because of the way that Lindgren got up. His arm was dangling. Like, it did not look good at all. So the fact that he basically, like 8 seconds after that, essentially, was in the locker room with no sling and he looked fine is nothing short of a miracle. And now again, we don't know how long Lindgren's going to be out. He was in a sling after the Capitals game. Apparently he didn't have it on last night, so we don't really know how long he's going to be out for. But I was worried that this was going to be an LTIR situation. Now, that could have helped the Rangers actually not only get Kane, but I made a joke that, like, hey, why don't the Rangers just get Jacob Chychrun, and then you just profit after that. Activate Lindgren for the playoffs, off you go, off to the races. Doesn't look like that's happening. Looks like Lindgren's going to be okay. And by all accounts, looks like Patrick Kane is going to be a Ranger for better or for worse. So there you go.
Yeah, they would not have done the roster shenanigans of the last 3 days if they were not getting Patrick Kane. This is going to happen. We all know it's going to happen. We don't know what the terms are, what the Blackhawks are going to be getting in return from the Rangers. Everybody's operating under the assumption they're going to be getting maybe an Arizona iced tea and a honey bun at best. They are not. The only reason the Rangers are doing this is because Kane only wants to go to the Rangers.
Yeah.
You could tell based on the way the Rangers cap situation was last week that they did not think that this was going to happen. If it was, they would not have rostered this many players. They would have tried to accrue the space a little bit earlier. You could tell that when they traded for Tarasenko about 3 weeks ago now, about 2-3 weeks ago now, that they thought that was their move. They were not being particularly diligent with paper transactioning on off days, sending Schneider down, which they could have been doing for the past month, and they could have traded for Kane probably by last week if they had done that. But this kind of just fell into their lap. And that's really the only reason the Rangers are in on this. And we can discuss the merits of acquiring Kane and if he solves anything or if he's just kind of more of what they already have. But for all intents and purposes, it just kind of speaks to how weird this entire situation is. You can't really describe anything like this ever in the NHL, at least. This kind of stuff has happened in the NBA a couple of times where guys have been like, I'm only going to one team, so either trade me or I'm just going to sit out. That's happened a handful of times, but that really hasn't happened in the NHL before. And the Blackhawks don't have a choice. They, like we were talking about before we started recording, they can either get nothing for Kane in 2 months when the season's over, or they can get a 3rd round pick, a 4th round pick, maybe a B prospect from the Rangers. And that's it. That's really all they're going to get here.
What's really interesting to me is when the Rangers acquired Tarasenko, and we talked about this before, but I want to bring it up again because obviously Patrick Kane is in the news. He's, by all accounts, going to be a Ranger within the next couple of days here, is that when the Rangers acquired Tarasenko, the reporting about Kane was that the Rangers did not like the way that Patrick Kane's hip was healing, and they decided to pivot to Tarasenko. What changed in the past 2 to 3 weeks?
Yeah, I guess. Goals in 2 weeks.
I guess. What changed specifically about his hip that the Rangers decided to go, okay, our worries don't matter anymore. Patrick Kane is well enough to play. I understand the price change, and I understand all of that. But from a health perspective, when you say to an organization, hey, we don't want this player because we are worried that he might literally not be healthy enough to play, and then 2 weeks later say, we're all like, we want this guy because he wants to come here. He's been a bona fide star. Therefore, we want him. What happened over the course of the past 2 weeks that has made the Rangers shift so dramatically in the way they view Patrick Kane's hip? I'm not talking about him as a player or as a person or how he fits on the roster. I'm not saying anything about any of that right now. Specifically about his hip, because it was reported by verified sources that the Rangers were afraid of Patrick Kane's hip health. What has happened over the course of the past 2 weeks that has basically reverted that? Did he heal his hip? I doubt it. So what happened?
Okay, so my assumption is Kane has been hot dogging it for the better part of 2 seasons now. The Blackhawks are not a particularly good team. He's there to get his points on the power play, float, occasionally chip in. When he wants to try, he can look better than he's played the last 2-3 seasons. I mean, I went and looked at it earlier today. The other team has scored, I think, 55% of the goals over the last 3 years when Kane is on the ice. And don't worry, Kane had 94 points last season. He also had a minus 15 goal differential in that time. He had 94 points. So you can operate under the assumption that he hasn't been given the best effort for most of this season. And then he saw, the Rangers aren't going to trade for me. Okay, I actually need to put in a little bit of effort here to get out of here. That is my assumption, that he had the 2-goal game last week. He had a hat trick last week. He almost scored the 1 goal against the Leafs that got waved off as time expired. My assumption is the Rangers thought he was hurt, and he probably is playing with a nagging hip injury. And we are all operating under the assumption that is the case. Maybe he's just been really lazy for quite a while. And I do think that's part of a lot of these undercurrent conversations of, well, if he had 94 points last year, why are his analytics so bad? Because he doesn't try. And there is a real discussion about the merits of bringing somebody who thinks it's okay to coast for the better part of 2 seasons into a team that expects to win a Stanley Cup. The teams that think they can turn it on and off, those are the teams that struggle. Kreider said it after the game the game against Washington. We think we can just show up and win some days, and that's not the case. I don't know what bringing somebody with that attitude into this group is going to do.
I don't know what the thing about Patrick Kane, and we've talked about this ad nauseum for weeks and weeks now, and it comes down to this: at a certain point, the Rangers by all accounts, by everybody that I've talked to and from other verified sources as well, is that the Rangers aren't going to give up a whole lot to get Patrick Kane. The reason being is that Patrick Kane has a no move clause, so he is very much 100% in control of where he goes. And by all accounts, Patrick Kane only wants to go to the Rangers. The Dallas Stars are interested in him. There are other teams that are interested in Patrick Kane. Patrick Kane only wants to be a New York Ranger right now. So for the Chicago Blackhawks, they're in a bind. Either they hold on to this man and in 2 months when the season's over, they let him walk for nothing, or they get a modicum of some kind of tangible benefit from the Rangers
Honey bun in Arizona.
In exchange, that's right, in exchange for Patrick Kane. Those are their two options. Patrick Kane has deserved his no move clause. He's carried this team to Stanley Cups, and he's had so many points and all of these things. Again, his off ice and his demeanor aside, we're not talking about that right now. His on ice stuff, he's done great things for that organization. They gave him that no move clause, and now he's showing it off. He's flexing. He's hey, I want to go to this one team, and if it's not them, it's nobody. And now I'm just gonna walk in 2 months. So for the Rangers, they don't. Brendan Othmann is not going to be a Chicago Blackhawk. I don't know how many times I have to say this. Brendan Othmann is not going anywhere.
No prospect of note will be traded.
Unless Connor McDavid suddenly becomes available, Brendan Othmann is not going to be included in any trade scenario. It's not happening. So the Rangers are probably just going to give up a mid-round pick to Chicago and another mid-round pick to a third team to broker this cap situation deal to make this happen for the Rangers. They're not giving up Brendan Othmann. I thought originally that the Rangers might have to give up Brett Berard, but that isn't to my understanding isn't happening either because Patrick Kane only wants to go to New York. Now, if Patrick Kane was like, I want to go to New York, but also if Dallas wants me, I might go to Dallas. Then the Rangers would have to be like, okay, we actually have to present a real offer. Yeah. But because he only wants to come here, the Rangers could say, here, we're halfway through this sandwich. How about we give you the rest of it for Patrick Kane? Because if you don't want this sandwich, you're not getting anything.
Yeah. The Kane stuff is it's been really just kind of miserable for the last week and a half. At this point, you're not going to convince anybody who thinks he's going to help that he's not going to help. And for the people who very realistically live through trauma every day related to things that Patrick Kane has been accused of, it's an uncomfortable situation for those people. And it's been overly hostile for a while now on both fronts. For the people who are just unwilling to totally listen to hey, I had this life experience that, messed my life up. All I'm saying is have empathy for people who are a little bit uncomfortable about this. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying you have to agree or you have to do this or that. I'm saying have empathy for people who are uncomfortable by this situation. I am one of them. I feel that the Rangers are throwing away all of the stuff they've preached the last couple of years about character and leadership by bringing in somebody who spent the last 2 seasons coasting on a bad team because he didn't think it was worth trying, who defended Stan Bowman and John Quenneville when they both resigned their jobs last fall, somebody who's been accused of some really bad shit, pled down from an assault charge to some petty robbery thing. And then somebody who I want to say, in 2009 or 10 at the Blackhawks Halloween party, he did blackface because he was Scottie Pippen for Halloween. So this is not somebody who has the best decision-making skills. We all are in agreement on that. For some people, that hockey is just a hobby. They don't want to think critically about it. They don't want to reflect what liking a certain team means about their morals, that kind of thing. Okay. I'm not one of those people. This entire situation has been very weird for 2 weeks now. And for the people who are uncomfortable, sorry you're getting a lot of shit that you probably shouldn't be getting over fucking hockey.
The thing about Patrick Kane that a lot of fans that just blatantly, want him on this team and don't care about any other stuff is that you play too much NHL 23, because the problem with disregarding a large portion of Patrick Kane is that you are disregarding his status in the locker room, how players feel about him, how coaches feel about him, how people in the organization view him as a person. So yeah, I mean, he's he's been a good hockey player for his career, sure, but you can't just say he's great on the ice and it doesn't matter what he is off the ice. That does not, you can't say that when hockey is a human being sport played by human beings and not just people that you can plug and play in your on your console version of NHL and call it a day. You can't just put him on the first on second line and then just simulate to a Stanley Cup win. That doesn't happen. This is reality we're talking about here. How team leaders view Patrick Kane, how Kane behaves himself off the ice, how all of these dynamics happen is important to every single aspect of this organization moving forward. Clearly the Rangers want him enough and think he's going to be a good fit and all that. That's fine. That's one thing. But
How it actually works.
once he gets to New York, how are the leaders of this team going to handle Patrick Kane? How is Patrick Kane going to handle being a part of this leadership group? How is he going to handle being in this media environment where people are going to ask him the tough questions? Hopefully, maybe. You never know, but I have high hopes that somebody somewhere down the line is going to be a little bit tougher on Patrick Kane than people have been in Chicago. So this is all very important. You can't just say we're getting Patrick Kane, the player, end of sentence. No. That's not how reality works. You are getting Patrick Kane, the hockey player, but also all of this other stuff that not just we know about. Oh, you bet every single player on the Rangers roster has already done their studying as to what kind of person and player Patrick Kane is. They've been well aware of this trade for weeks now. Braden Schneider and Ryan Carpenter, you don't think they know why they're not playing? Of course they know. Like, this is, the players are very well aware of the mechanisms of what's going on behind the scenes. They have done their research. So now it's all a matter of, okay, well, you're getting Patrick Kane. Now, how is this all going to work?
We're hoping for the best here. That's the thing.
Yeah,
we're hoping
sure.
for the best, but we feel obligated to talk about this because we have spent extensive time on the show since we started last June. That hockey is about being inclusive. That what makes hockey fun is having people to share the experience with, and the more people that feel welcome, the better. So felt obligated to touch on this for a few minutes here. But talking from a hockey perspective, I do not understand the fit beyond the name, which is what you were getting at before. And speaking to the NHL mindset of just get as many good players as you can and see what happens. Because the Rangers over the last, I'd say 2 to 3 weeks, have not been playing great defensively, and that includes the forwards, and specifically the forwards because Kane is a forward, and it's going to contribute to this situation here where the Rangers have been conceding a lot more chances against, and their goaltending has not been as good the last couple of weeks. For the season, it's about 9-11 at 5-on-5. The last 10 games, it's 890 something. So there's a real correlation here between the Rangers are conceding a lot more chances against, the goalies are saving fewer chances against. The only thing that saved them and why they were on that winning streak before the 4-game losing streak is during this 10-game stretch, they had the best shooting percentage in the league of 11%. So you can get by with an 890 something save percentage if you're going to shoot over 11% at 5-on-5. That's not going to be the case long term, though.
Especially in the playoffs.
Correct. But something we can give them a little bit of credit for since Tarasenko has gotten here, the power play has been a bit better. They're up to 10th. For most of the season, they've been 17th, 18th, 19th. They've gotten up to 10th over the course of the last 2-3 weeks. That is encouraging. Right now, the Rangers need to find a way to get the goaltending, the forwards, and the special teams all going at the same time. Because for stretches this season, you've been getting 2 out of 3 at best. You haven't gotten everything working all at once for any sustained period of time here. They've had individual games where they've been able to do that, but they haven't had a good 3-week stretch where they're controlling play at 5-on-5, the goaltending's been lights out, and the power play is scoring at 23, 24% of the time. There's plenty of time to get this right. It is still February. They're going to add Kane either Tuesday or Wednesday, depending on how the money works out. There's plenty of time to get that stuff right. I'm still not entirely convinced Patrick Kane solves the issue at hand here, which is that they have one defensive pair that is on the ice for more goals than they're against. God bless Adam Fox. If the Rangers didn't have Adam Fox, the Rangers would be the Oilers, essentially, where they would be every single game. They would need to score 4 or 5 goals to have a chance to win. He's on the ice 62% of the goals. Every other defenseman on the Rangers is below 50%, other than Zach Jones, which he doesn't count anymore, unfortunately. Right. But yeah, go ahead.
The thing about Patrick Kane as well that needs to be talked about is that he's going to play, to my understanding, he's going to be playing on a line with Panarin. They rekindling the old friendship that they had in Chicago and this and that and all these things. Okay. Panarin doesn't play defense.
Like when he wants to, he's good, but he very rarely chooses to do it.
Right. Like when he's up to the task, he will do it. The problem is he doesn't do it very often. So when you have a player like that plays defense very sporadically, when he wants to play defense and when he gives 110% for the game, he looks good on both ends of the ice. But there's not a whole lot of games this season where you can take a look at how he's played and say he had a really good 200-foot game. He's normally very dangerous in the offensive zone, sometimes in the neutral zone. Defensively, he hasn't been very good. That's not really a secret. It shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. Even if you're not into analytics, just watch this man play, and you will quickly realize that he isn't really giving it 100. He's not doing a whole lot defensively. Okay. So now you add Patrick Kane to that line, and you add the same player. So somebody who will score, sure, but provides absolutely nothing defensively. So now instead of having one player like that, when you can kind of...
Don't forget Tarasenko, too.
Yeah, I mean, Tarasenko, he's going to play on a different line, but that's... But
speaking to the point I was making before about the forwards not contributing defensively.
Yeah.
Even if he's playing with Zibanejad and Kreider, I mean, we still need more defense from the forwards.
We need... The Rangers need players that can defend. Like, it's not a... I'm not asking for 12 Patrice Bergerons. That's not going to happen. But somebody who can score that can also at least sometimes prevent the puck from going in your own net is very important, especially come playoff time. And for the Rangers right now have Tarasenko, who I tweeted about this last night. Like, he's been kind of quiet for long stretches of times. Like he's had good moments here and there for sure.
He's been very passive.
He hasn't
been shooting a lot. He hasn't been in great spots. He's been good on the power play because he hasn't scored really, but he's in a good spots on the power play, which is opening things up and getting Trocheck off of that first unit, even in the intermittent times they've done that, has helped the unit out immeasurably. It's part of why they've gone from 17th to 10th over the last 2-3 weeks is the fact that Tarasenko's out there on that first unit, and they have somebody on their forehand. They have two guys who can shoot the one-timer on the ice at one time, and that's making everybody else on the ice more dangerous. The problem with Kane and Tarasenko and Panarin is it's great you can score a ton. But if the other team scores more than you do when you're scoring a ton, you are the Edmonton Oilers. Yeah. You lose. It's great if you score 4 goals, but if the other team scores 5, you lose. Mm-hmm. The Rangers have had this issue all year. Going back to the early parts of the season, when they were playing Lafreniere on the offside with Trocheck and Panarin, they were generating a ton of offense. They were generating so much offense. Puck wasn't going in the net. They were conceding a ton defensively, but they were still generating more offense than they were conceding. Can the Rangers find a way to have both things at once? Can we get a ton of volume and just less concede less than you generate? You don't need to be shut down, lockdown, but you need more than what you're getting over the last 10 games. Because I wrote it down here. Over the last 10 games, they're conceding exactly as many goals as they're scoring. 3.13 per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. They're conceding that many and scoring that many. The other thing that's a little bit concerning is they are playing a lot more open-ended hockey. They are going up and down. They are trading chances. And they're not well suited to do that against the better teams.
No.
That style of play is fine against Ottawa. That style of play is fine against the teams that are poor defensively. Against the Devils, the Bruins, the Leafs, you're going to get run out of the building in a track meet against those teams. And the Rangers need to be better defensively. And it's on everybody. It's not just the defensemen. It's not just the forwards. It's everybody needs to be better defensively.
The thing about the track meet style that will differentiate the Rangers from the Oilers is that the Rangers actually have a goaltender. The Oilers don't have anybody that can stop the puck. Like, Jack Campbell is bad, and Oilers fans will be the first one to tell you he's been bad. And the Oilers, like, that's their primary goaltender. They don't have a secondary option who's
Stuart
just
Skinner's not awful.
He's fine, but he's
not Igor.
He's not somebody that can just come in at any game and he drop a 50 save performance. Like, he might be able to do that every now and again, but he's not somebody that you can rely on to steal you a game. Whereas for Shesterkin, the argument, besides like the last couple of games that he's played, even though he played very well last night, like that was way more of the Shesterkin that we know him to play. Whereas the games before were a little bit shaky. He wasn't square to some shot. Like, he just didn't look very good. But last night he looked a lot better. So the argument there is that if the Rangers can continue their offensive output, their defensive issues will be masked by Igor Shesterkin. Now, the problem with that, the Rangers did the exact same thing with Henrik Lundqvist his entire career. Basically, they didn't get Patrick Kane and Tarasenko, all these things, but their argument was the Rangers don't need to have this incredible defensive scheme because Henrik Lundqvist is here to save the day. And what came about after all of those years, as Lundqvist tried so hard to carry this team to a Stanley Cup win, he has no rings. My fear is that the Rangers are doing this all over again with Igor, and that they are providing no real help for him in front of his own net because, hey, Patrick Kane can score you a goal.
Can we make the entire team out of Adam Fox? That would solve the Rangers' problem.
Sure. Let me just boot up the console real quick. Let's make that creative player go.
That's really the formula for the Rangers here. I was talking about this the other day with my uncle because my uncle's birthday's coming up, and we were talking about going to a game. And he's like, I don't think Patrick Kane's really going to help because they give up too many goals. And I said, I agree with you. And he goes, this feels very like 2003. He's like, this kind of feels like when they brought in like Bure or Lindros, like at the end. Like, Kane's playing better than those guys at that point. Like, he's still close to a point per game player, but it feels like chasing the name as opposed to trying to find a guy who fits perfectly. And part of that, I think, like to your point about not learning your lessons, is I don't think the Rangers ever learned the right lesson from all of the mistakes during the Henrik Lundqvist era. You think about how quickly that unraveled. Well, how did it unravel? They gave bad contracts to old, slow defensemen. Right now, they have a captain who is probably their worst regular defenseman. I would argue that Braden Schneider, Fox, Lindgren, and K'Andre have all played better than Trouba this year.
Sure.
I think there's a real argument that if the Rangers got a mulligan, they wouldn't do it. I think there's a world in which you could probably find a team to take him, even if you have to retain half, if he didn't have a no move. There's so many things here about that bleed into this about not learning from mistakes. I mean, you think about it. What were the Rangers' big takeaways when they really had one of those foundational shifts? We need to get tougher. So they brought in 3 guys who had no hockey upside whatsoever. One of them is still here, and he's maybe going to play 4th line center or maybe top 6 wing. That's another thing my uncle said. He goes, how many games before Gaudreau plays more minutes than everybody on the kid line in a playoff game? And I said probably like game 4 of the first round.
Yeah,
like Gaudreau will go up into the top 6. They'll slide somebody else down. They'll skip a kid line shift a couple times, and you're going to end up with Gaudreau with 18 minutes because he's going to kill penalties and all of the things that go on. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
If you bring Kane in here, how are you ever going to get chemistry with these guys? He's kept the kid line together for now, which good. It's also cooled off a lot since he first put them together.
They look good. They look good last night, though.
They had a few good chances. They had one really good shift in the second period where Hedl had the puck down low, lost it, got it to Lafreniere. But generally speaking, I still don't really feel as confident as a lot of people out there do that this is going to be the move that gets them that much closer. You tweeted about this yesterday, and I think we can transition the conversation here to talking about it now. Is just The East is so
Oh,
good.
yeah.
The seven of the 8 best teams in the league are in the Eastern Conference.
Yep.
And the Rangers added Tarasenko, Timo Meyer. Excuse me. The Rangers added Tarasenko. They're going to add Patrick Kane. They added Tyler Mott. They added Nico Mikkola. The Devils added Timo Meyer. The Leafs added Ryan O'Reilly, Jake McCabe, and Sam Lafferty. The Lightning added Tanner Jeannot. I think the Lightning might add someone else too, just because I feel like they might. And Carolina has been linked to a lot of people. I feel Carolina is definitely going to add something before the deadline on Friday.
For what it's worth, also, I was told the Hurricanes were very much into getting Timo Meyer, but essentially Mike Grier kind of priced them out of it. Which for New Jersey, like, it was great because they I don't want to say they stole Timo Meyer
They didn't
from
give
San
up
Jose.
anything great.
That
They didn't give up anything great.
They didn't give up a Dawson Mercer or an Alex Holtz. They didn't give up a real big blue chip to get one of the best forwards in the NHL. And again, the Toronto Maple Leafs remains to be seen whether or not they actually win a playoff run for once. But the thing about the Maple Leafs right now is that Dubas doesn't care what he gives up. It doesn't matter. And by the way, the Jake McCabe trade, we talked about this before we started recording. Jake McCabe is a tremendous defenseman because if you put up really good analytics on a team that is a dumpster fire, then you're probably a really good fit on a playoff team. And he essentially didn't give up too much to get somebody like Jake McCabe. Now, Sam Lafferty is a guy who is one of the hockey players in the NHL, that's for sure. So Sam Lafferty is probably going to slot in, and somebody like Alex Kerfoot is going to be on his way out because of cap reasons. But Jake McCabe is a really solid defenseman. And for the Maple Leafs, it's Kyle Dubas' last shot. It's Dubas's and Sheldon Keefe's last shot. So they both know that if they don't bulk up their team and actually win a playoff round, that's over for both of them and potentially over for a good chunk of the core on the Maple Leafs roster. So the Maple Leafs got a lot better. The Devils got a lot better. The Bruins got a lot better. These teams are getting so deep and so good at every position that it's going to be an absolute bloodbath. And the West looks very weak in comparison. The West, like every big
Ivan Barbashev's not moving the needle for you going to Vegas.
Every strong team that you are terrified to play against is located in the East. I can make a case that the Rangers could beat any Western team that is currently in contention. Even the Winnipeg Jets, even the Winnipeg. If Connor Hellebuyck doesn't save 99 high percentage shots again, the Rangers would win that game easily, right? Like, you can make a case that the Rangers could win 4 out of 7 games against any team in the Western Conference. Can you make that same argument against the Eastern Conference?
No.
I would say no.
Talent-wise, I would say the Rangers are probably the 5th best team in the Eastern Conference. And that's maybe being a little generous, but I think Boston is more talented. I think Toronto is more talented. I think the Devils might be more talented, but then you get to the back ends and the goalies, and it's a little bit close.
Yeah.
So if you want to bet the Devils, okay, maybe not. If you wanted to say Carolina, no. I would say the Rangers are more talented than Carolina. But you really want to avoid falling into playing the Devils in the first round.
It's probably going to happen.
The Rangers need the Devils to pass the Hurricanes, because if the Rangers play the Hurricanes in the first round, I would feel reasonably okay about that. Not a lock, not a guarantee, not safe or anything, but that is the best probable matchup the Rangers could get without winning the division. Because if they win the division and then they play the Islanders or the Penguins or the Sabres or the Panthers or whoever's that first wild card is, okay, the Rangers have a decent chance against them. But the Devils make me very nervous. Meyer and Jack Hughes, or Meyer with Heischer, that's the thing, man. You add a Timo Meyer, who's one of the best, if not the Timo Meyer is probably the second best power forward in the entire league. You add him to a team that's already dominant at both ends and is pretty tight defensively, tight enough to the point that they've had basically replacement level goaltending all year, and they're this good. That speaks to just how quality the Devils are at forward and on the back end. And they added the best player available at this deadline. There's not really a question. Meyer is the best player that's getting moved. There's nobody else that's really particularly close. If you wanted to say Ryan O'Reilly's the next tier, sure. But Kane and Tarasenko, no. Horvat is a tier below Timo Meyer. Nobody else is on Meyer's level that's gotten moved or will get moved.
Are you not aboard the Jeannot train? Does that not move the needle for you? Well, I joke, but like the thing about what we're talking about is that we're not here to sugarcoat. We're not here to be like, oh well, Patrick Kane's the solution, and everybody just plan the parade now because Rangers are going to win. Like that's not what we're here for. We are here because this is the most objective Rangers podcast out there. We are here to provide the factual evidence and provide the hey, like let's take all of this data that we have, all of this data, the information, all the factual stuff that we have, and let's make that into one cohesive conversation. Like that's what we're here for. And if you're a Rangers fan and you only want to hear that the Rangers are the best team out there, regardless of who the Rangers are rostering, then we're not the show for you, because we live in reality and we have to look at what other teams are doing and how, like, because that all impacts the Rangers. Come playoff time, all of these decisions are going to be played out. So come first round, if it's the Devils and the Rangers, and the Devils are throwing out a first line of Jack Hughes and Timo Meyer and all these guys, like, yeah, you can make the argument that Zibanejad and Kreider are also very good players, and they are, but in a track meet against the Devils, that is something that I am very much concerned about. I think that if the Devils and the Rangers get into a 7-game series track meet, the Devils are going to win 4 of the 7 games right now. With Kane or without Kane, that doesn't change for me. And that's a scary thing. But again, hockey is a strange, silly, stupid, weird, great sport where anything can happen, because puck luck is something that no other sport has as much of. Anything can happen. You can get a shot from the blue line from Ben Harper, and it goes off of 17 people in front of the net, and it goes in, and the Rangers win in 7. Like, that can only happen in this sport that we love so much. Like, so it's tough to predict for sure, but just the way that other teams are gearing up for this really makes me scared to get through this gauntlet that's about to go down in the Eastern Conference playoffs.
You have to think about it like this. You are going to play the Devils or Carolina in round 1. You're going to play the other one of those teams in round 2. And if you get to the conference finals, you're going to play Tampa, Toronto, or Boston.
Great.
I am not really putting one of the wild card teams, whether it's Pittsburgh, Buffalo, the Islanders, Detroit.
No,
I think the Rangers can beat all of those teams.
Yeah,
I think the Rangers can beat all of those teams.
Yeah.
If you're playing any of those Atlantic Division teams after beating the Devils and then Carolina, you're going to be tired. You're going to be beat up. You're probably going to have a couple guys playing at less than 100%. And you saw it yesterday. What happens when the Rangers are down 1-2 guys? There aren't a lot of teams that can sustain losing their first-line center. Not the Rangers, are not. Most teams in the league are not the 2020 Lightning, who were able to play the entire season without Steven Stamkos, win the Stanley Cup, having Steven Stamkos play one shift in the playoffs. There's not a lot of teams that have the depth and the talent to be able to do that. Of course, there'll be people who say, well, yeah, the Lightning had a salary cap of $101 million. Yes, you're correct. I agree with you. But for all intents and purposes, you lose somebody of Zibanejad's ilk, Lindgren's ilk, you're done. That's it. You don't have the horses to compete with the other teams. The last thing I want to say before we wrap up and get out of here, that's not to say the Rangers cannot keep getting better. Sure. That is my assumption here. I said it before we started this part of the conversation that they haven't been able to get the 5-on-5, the goaltending, and the special teams all going at the same time. They get 2 of those 3 going, because right now I would argue all they've really got going is the 5-on-5 offense. The defense has been bad for 2 weeks now. The goaltending has really struggled the last 2 weeks. They need to get at least 1 more of those right by the start of the playoffs. If we're looking that second week of April when the playoffs start, and you've at least got Igor and the offense going, and the special teams are a work in progress, okay. If you get Igor in the power play, okay. But you need to get at least 2 of those 3 going if you really want to be in a good situation come playoff time. And there's a lot of time to get it right. There's going to be a lot of permutations of this lineup. You got your top 12 locked in now. You get Kane here Tuesday or Wednesday. He's going into the top 6. Gaudreau and Vesey go to that 4th line with Tyler Mott. You get the kid line, and then you either put Kane with Tarasenko, you put Kane with Trocheck and Panarin, or you put him with Zibanejad and Kreider, and then Tarasenko with the inverse. You know what the lineup's going to look like. There's going to probably be permutations of who plays with who. You know the 12 forwards. You know the 6 defensemen. You know your starting goalie. Your backup goalie's been a nice surprise this season. You got to figure it out now. This is it. There is no more reinforcements after Wednesday. When Kane gets here, there is nobody else. It is on the guys on that team. You heard Kreider say it. I mentioned it before when we first started. They cannot just keep showing up to games and expect to win. They can't. At this point in the season, to have stinkers like what you had against the Red Wings, the Capitals, it's just not acceptable to go out there and get dog walked 6-2 by a team that gave up. The Capitals gave up. They traded Orlov and Hathaway and said, okay, our season's over. Even if we make the playoffs, we know we're not beating Boston. You cannot go out there and get dog walked by a team that's conceded its season.
Yeah, that was embarrassing. Like, if you can say anything that you want about that game, but ultimately it was embarrassing, especially because it was on national TV, man.
That
like,
I don't care about, but just
no. I know that, but from an optics perspective, because objectively more people are watching this game as opposed to a locally broadcasted event, to get embarrassed, not only on local TV, but to get embarrassed on national TV against it, like, you're the Rangers, a team that has Stanley Cup aspirations. You are playing a team that, like you said, gave up. They traded Orlov and Hathaway, and they have more players on the trade market, and they are done. They know that this is not the year for them, and this is their year to retool. Like, obviously, because they're not trading Ovechkin, like, they are still going to try to be competitive in some way. Maybe next year or 2 years on the line, like, they are trying to recuperate and retool as they go. So you are playing a team that essentially is punting for next season. And you go into that game and you get embarrassed like that. This is very reminiscent of the games in October, in November, in early December, where the Rangers kind of just showed up against bad teams, expected to win, and then they got humiliated. And that's what happened against Washington. Like, this is a team that has nothing to play for at this point. They are there to complete the season.
Ovechkin the scoring record.
Yeah, exactly. They are there to feed Ovechkin, and that's about it. And you get embarrassed by a team like that, and not only that, you get Lindgren hurt on top of that. Like, it's a bad sign. It's a red flag that this is still happening. We are essentially 4 minutes away from this being March. The playoffs are in like 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks. Like, we are rapidly approaching playoff season. The fact that the Rangers can still come into a game and play like that is very concerning. And you might hear this and you say, "Oh, we're being naysayers and this team is okay and all these things." Well, we're basing this on reality. If this was a game that was happening in November, it'd be one thing. We're almost at playoff time, guys. Like, this is it. The deadline is in a week from now. Crunch time is now, and the playoffs are very soon. The Rangers still having these issues is a problem. It is a red flag, whether you want to admit it to yourself or not, but this is a problem. You don't see the Boston Bruins playing a team that isn't expected to win anything, and they lay an egg, right? The Boston Bruins aren't doing that. The best teams in the NHL are either doing it not at all or very rarely. The Rangers do it a fair bit, and that is concerning, whether you want to admit it to yourself or not.
I think it's tied to the track meet style of hockey, where if there's not that open space for them to break out and cleanly get to offense, they really have a hard time. I mean, the first half of the Kings game yesterday, they had a really hard time getting going on offense. By midway through the second, they started getting a little bit more zone time, and then they pulled away in the third. But when they got to work for that space, when they got to work through the neutral zone and go get the puck, it's a lot harder for them because that's not a style they're particularly comfortable with.
It is something that, and again, like,
It's been years of this too.
It has been years of this. Now, it's difficult to be up here and say, "Oh, well, if I was Christopher Drury, I would have done this," blah, 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 because we're not talking to general managers, right? Like at the end of the day, we don't know. I'm sure Drury has had conversations with other GMs about other players and has done his due diligence, if I could speak
There
correctly.
we go.
There it is. Like, personally, I would much rather. Now, again, I don't know what the price is for somebody like Jacob Chikrin, but personally, to shore up the defense, I would have liked Jacob Chikrin. I understand that the price to get somebody like Chikrin is way higher than it is to get Patrick Kane right now. However, Jacob Chikrin has been a phenomenal defenseman his entire career on some pretty bad Coyotes teams. The Coyotes have been dangling him at the trade deadline every year, and every year they hold on to him. Now, I tweeted this out yesterday as well. Like, if he doesn't get moved at this deadline, I wouldn't blame him one bit if he files a grievance with the Coyotes, because this man, every year, he's like, his team goes to him, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna trade you." And then the deadline comes and goes, and he doesn't get traded. Like, eventually, the grievance is going to come. So the Coyotes might be overplaying their hand a little bit. So if I was Drury, I'd be like, "Hey, what would you like? Let's have a conversation." And if we should, the third team and all, like, have that same kind of system in place. But the Rangers, I personally think, need Chikrin a lot more than need Patrick Kane.
Vitaly Krasov, thank you for your service.
Thank you for your service.
God bless you. Good luck.
We will miss you. You were scapegoated by Gerard Gallant for reasons that we will never quite understand. Yeah, they played Jake Leschyshyn over you. I don't understand it. I will never understand it, and we will miss you because Kravtsov will play in Vancouver, and I have no doubt in my mind that he will be a solid player for them.
I think he'll be a solid NHLer. Probably 40 points, okay two-way. I think he's a solid third liner. Wish he would have gotten a chance, but, you can't change stubborn people's minds. Whatever.
Well, Barca Goudreau is very, very much more important than Kravtsov. So
he's shown everybody his Stanley Cup rings, Andrew.
That's
and
right.
Inspired them.
I tweeted out his analytics earlier last week, and if you haven't seen them, go to my Twitter page at Chelney Andrew, CHELNEY Andrew. Just scroll through the media, you will see it. Barclay Goudreau's analytics are atrocious. They are so bad.
Because they tried using him as the magic eraser on the line with Panarin, who plays no defense, and when you are consistently getting outchanced over an extended period of time, you don't have a good shot, so you can't cheese your war a little bit with a good shooting percentage. It's really hard to generate good analytics when you're consistently being outchanced and outscored when you're on the ice.
True.
Yeah. All right, that'll do it for this week's show. Wanted to say thank you for the 11 5-star reviews on Spotify. Appreciate you people.
Thank you.
Leaving reviews is very helpful wherever you do. If you're on YouTube, subscribe, leave comments, vote in the polls, do the fun stuff, the little things, stay engaged with the community. Make sure you are following the show on Twitter and Instagram at Liberty Blue Pod. On YouTube, it's Liberty Blue Podcast. On Twitter, we're live on Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube every Monday. Might do something Friday around the deadline because it's not like there's anything to report. We'll see what schedules are looking like. Other than that, make sure.
TSN Trade Center this week is going to be the entire panel playing Uno because all the trades are going to be already done by that point.
It's going to be reminiscent of... Oh, no, you're not on TikTok. That's right. You're old.
I'm not. No, I'm an old man.
No, because the trend in the last 2 weeks is people using the AI voice generators, having the presidents play Minecraft. So it's
I have seen those on Instagram. Yeah, I have seen those. I'm an adult, in which I mean I go on Instagram and see TikTok reels that have been popular 2 weeks ago. So there's that.
Yeah, no, that's kind of the vibe on Friday. It's just going to be guys hanging out and talking and being like, so can you tell us how making a trade works? Well, you call the league office and say, we have an agreement. Can you make sure the finances work? The finances work? That's great. We're going to send you a fax right now. The only people still using faxes are the professional sports franchises.
That's right. What's better than this? Guys being dudes.
That's all that's all Trade Center on TSN is going to be, but at least they usually have Duthie doing something stupid.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, but whereas where Sportsnet will just be like Elliot and Merrick going back and forth talking in riddles. Well, do you remember the 1979 Kachina Rangers? Why?
It's the McCabe trade, and we'll get out on this, I promise. The McCabe trade was so hilarious because once again the team
Leafs
account tweeted it. And then Elliot, I think it was Elliot Friedman, he was like, "Oh, I'm hearing that Jake McCabe is going to be a Toronto Maple Leaf." Dude, I'm so sick and tired of these people that don't do their jobs and they get paid so much money and then they pat themselves on the back by taking the rest of the day off. The Timo Meier trade yesterday was the most agonizing thing I've ever seen in my life because they tweeted out that Timo Meier was going to be a Devil, and then 3 hours went by and we didn't have any information. Like, what is going on? Woj would have had their plane coordinates. What's going on? What a joke. What a joke.
They should have Elliot and Merrick play Clue on Friday. That's what they should do on Sportsnet, and because there's not going to be any trades to report.
No. James Van Riemsdyk, though, might get traded. Who knows?
He at least intrigues me a little bit because he's something the Rangers don't have. But that's a moot point because Kane is coming tomorrow.
That's right.
All right, we'll see you guys next week. Be sure to be tuned in. There will be some bullshit that happens in the next week. The Rangers haven't had a normal season in like 5 years at this point. So.
Five is a low number, but yeah, sure.
Yeah. All right, we'll see you guys next week.
Later.